All right, guys, it's time for the Next Level Guy Show, a men's interview, interest, and improvement-focused podcast featuring interviews with the greats from all industries to help you better your life. Each week, a new episode features an interview with one of the greats, covering all aspects of their story, from life hacks to tips and protocols that have allowed them to live life on the next level. We then highlight concrete action steps that you can use to improve your life. And now, your host, Ian Dawson Mackay.
And today's guest is Enigma. Enigma is a body language analyst who makes videos on the body language and mannerisms of characters and actors in movies, TV shows, internet videos, and so much more. Enigma teaches how body language can be learnt and used to make us better communicators and connectors with others. He's a qualified body language analyst with a CPD certified diploma in body language analysis and is endorsed by the Quality License Scheme. In this interview, we discuss what body language is and why it's a superpower if you can understand it, how body language leakage and micro-expressions can help you be better in all situations, from dates to poker to business meetings, and so much more. This one is awesome, and you'll want to get a notepad and pen to take notes because the gems come frequent and fast in this one. And now, let's get to the interview. I love Enigma. Where did that come from?
I've always been fascinated in mystery, and originally my channel was about deduction and Sherlock Holmes, but I kind of wanted to move off from that and feature more on mysteries because I'm just fascinated in UFOs, ghosts, paranormal, and then also like human psychology and things like that. So I thought Enigma is the perfect word because it means difficult to understand. Perfect word to describe what we're doing on the channel. So that's where it came from.
Love it. So, for those who maybe don't recognise the brand yet, but I mean, I can't understand why because it's a brilliant channel. Could you give somebody a quick introduction? Like, say you had to give them a pitch between elevator floors or something like that. How would you sum up what you do on your Enigma YouTube channel?
I explain the things that people should be interested in. So, body language, for example, I call it a superpower. That people don't really tap into. So the whole channel is focused on body language currently, but then it'll focus on all other mysteries and things that are looking us in the face, but that we don't want to acknowledge yet. I think that's the easiest way to describe it.
I mean, it was quite amazing when I was watching it with like how much little gestures, which you don't even recognize you're doing. You can feel it, but you don't actually know that you're portraying it to the world, can mean, and people can understand and what it actually implies, and how the group dynamics change depending on, when everybody's laughing, who somebody looks at, for example, or the little micro expressions. It's really interesting to discover this, and I love that you use your like films and TVs. It's not just some random guy. It's scenes we've seen, and we can actually appreciate the art better from it. But what was your inspiration for this? What made you think, body language is for me?
Well, it all started 5 years ago when I created the channel. Initially, I was into deduction, so Sherlock Holmes, picking up tiny little bits of information and formulating a big conclusion from it. But it came to me that the easiest things from body language to learn, the main things that actually gave results was body language, from deduction. So I thought, making inferences and judgments, they aren't very accurate from deduction, but body language was like the one thing that was reliably accurate, reliably provided information. So I wanted to dive deeper into that and the psychology behind it than just stay with deduction, and it's become something amazing. And I've reacted to film scenes because I wanted to make it relatable to everyone, because everyone's seen Joker, everyone's seen Marvel films, so to actually show people that it's not just in a certain circumstance, it's actually in everything, in the famous movie scenes. You can pick up so much more just from looking at it from a body language point of view. And I think that's why it's worked well, is because people get to watch their favorite movie scenes, but with an extra level of depth and appreciation for the acting as well.
because that was something that really came across in your videos was, you kept mentioning about the quality of the acting. And I think I understand it better now by seeing all the little sort of nuances you're mentioning. And I can kind of go, oh, right. Now I know why he was doing that. So you're not just going, the line reading was bad. You're kind of going, so that's what that facial expression meant. And it really made me kind of watch TV shows in a different light. And I really like that about your show. But why would you, for somebody listening who's thinking, oh, body language is quite interesting, why would we be interested in body language? What is the purpose, or what's the level up that you get from understanding body language?
It's huge. I call it the superpower. It's the hidden superpower, and other people have talked about it before. It gives you an advantage in every single situation. And I don't mean advantage in a sort of a nasty way. I mean, like, it will make your encounters with other people so much easier because you can understand with your conscious what's going on. We all can read body language with our subconscious, and we get, general impressions from people. If someone walks into a room, you might instantly dislike them, but you don't know why. Understanding body language with your conscious allows you to understand why you don't like that person, or why you like that person, or what they're like in a social situation. And being able to pick up on that gives you a huge advantage over everyone else, because it means that you have more knowledge. And it's an economics term that I like. And it's called asymmetric information. And it basically means, in economics, say there's a garage sale or a car boot sale and someone's selling a vase for £100. It's a nice looking vase, but because you've researched antiques, that it's actually worth £50,000. To them, if you buy it, it's good for them, because they're like, oh, we've got rid of this old antique for £100. We thought it was worth nothing. So to them, they're happy. And to you, you're happy because you've just made £50,000. It's like that with body language. It allows you to see situations and take advantage of them that other people just are completely oblivious to. And I think the biggest application of it is in the dating world, trying to give a good impression to a girl or stuff like that. That's where most people are interested in it.
I've got a whole section on that. I used to do a bit of pickup, and it was indicators of interest, and what was it? It used to be if their feet were angled this way, it meant this, and this. And it took it out of, it made you stop becoming real. In that kind of situation. I didn't like it in terms of, it was handy to know what things meant, but they had if they're doing this, then do this routine. And it kind of lost it for me. But which part of us controls body language? Is this something that we can really learn to control? Or are we always going to have our brain at some point showing our fear, showing our, is it through this, is it cycles?
Yeah, this is the thing with body language, and you'll see a lot of people making YouTube videos about body language. So body language varies between cultures. The conscious body language is what I call it. You have to understand that body language isn't that developed. There aren't standard terms across everything that means the same thing. So people will say body language, thumbs up. Saying thumbs up is body language because, you're expressing a message with the thumbs up. And that's true. Body language encompasses that. But what I'm interested in is the biological reasoning, the pacifying behaviors, the distancing behaviors, and what causes them to happen and what they actually mean. And so that's really what I think body language, for me, what I'm interested in is that it's the biological side. I'm not really interested in, thumbs up and hand signals and stuff like that. I like the biological stuff that actually really reveals what our subconscious is thinking, and that's what provides us with the most information. You can control your body language, but you would have to be very, very good, because it's like controlling fear. If you're afraid, you're trying to consciously tell your subconscious to not be afraid. Or if you have stage fright, it's the same way. You can try and control your body language the same way you try and control stage fright. But it's a natural process, and your brain's going to try and get you to do things, to react in certain ways. So you can have some influence over it, but you'd have to be an incredibly good person, skilled person, to control it for a long amount of time. Everyone slips up somewhere. And actually, if you're a liar and stuff, or you're a serial killer trying to hide it, the more you try and fake it, the easier it is to spot, because basically you baseline the whole time, and baseline is really important in body language. You'll go from having neutral body language, which is trying to stop giving off expressions, and then all of a sudden you'll exhibit one cue, you'll slip up once, and it's that slip up, the huge deviation in the baseline, that is what people like me will look at and go, oh, that shouldn't be there. Why is that there? So actually what happens is if you try and control it, you end up making it worse for yourself because any one slip up is instantly recognizable. Whereas if you were constantly doing pacifying behaviors and that was your baseline, it's more difficult to see like pacifying behaviors occur at certain points because you're already doing it, basically.
So how do you learn this? I mean, so say if somebody was saying, yeah, okay, that's maybe just his opinion, or, some of these other channels, how do you actually learn it? I mean, there is obviously you've got a qualification in this, but how do you start to learn this? How would you advise somebody listening to go about that? Is there training we can do, or is it just a kind of trust your gut and how you interact with people, do you think?
So, as I said before, we all know body language. We all can get a feeling of what people are doing. And what I really learn from reading books is that's the main way of learning for me, is books and actually using it practically, because although it's an underdeveloped field, and like deduction, you can formulate massive conclusions. I don't like that. You can see small observations, and that's the main thing, is picking up on things. If someone does a distancing behavior, that is a distancing behavior because that's what it is. And books will tell you and explain why they're doing the distancing behavior. So it's easy to identify these nonverbal cues. But then what I'm not a big fan of, and people who have just gotten into body language, is interpreting what those cues mean. So you'll have internet articles that will say, oh, if they look up and left, it means they're lying. If they look up and right, they're telling the truth. That's nonsense. It'll vary based on person to person. But what we can, the scientific, which is, again, what I'm so interested in, the pacifying behaviors, the reactions to stress, that is factual. That is something that we can quantify, we can test. So it's like, that's what I'd say. Get into that. Read the Dictionary of Body Language. It's a brilliant book. Read the book, What Everybody is Saying. That gives you a brilliant understanding. And then go out and pick up those observations. Don't make conclusions, but just go, okay, that was a distancing behavior. That was a pacifying behavior. He's distancing with his feet. He wants to leave the conversation, and then see if he actually leaves the conversation based on his foot positioning. These are all things that you can just sit and watch and understand. And once you've got that understanding, you can then try and learn more and try and test and try and say, well, he's probably lying because he's doing these behaviors. It's kind of, it's a bit like chemistry. You've got chemicals reacting in a certain way. It's the same with body language. You'll see people react and you'll make assumptions based on that, but it might not always be universal. And that's where I think there's a grey area, and that's why a lot of people say body language is nonsense. But I disagree. I mean, the course that I did, that course was pretty much just definitions. It was defining things. It didn't say, this means that they're a liar. It said nothing like that. It was purely listing the cues and what they were defined as, proxemics. It was really, really useful, actually, to learn. That's why the Dictionary of Body Language is so important. Read that, because it will tell you what all these are, and you can categorize them. So that's how I learned, anyway.
And I mean, that was, I suppose there's a lot of myths around body language, and one of them was always said like 95% of your communication is through your body language. It's non-verbal. It's not so much what you say, it's how you're saying it. I mean, are there myths like that? I mean, that was what I was always told. If your eyes went up and to the left, it was activating this part of the brain and that part of the brain. But that's the way I looked at it, was like, and that's what I got from your channel, was all of that is just such a myth. There's not, this doesn't exist. It's not like I can read every single person by. How do we establish a baseline? How do we know what's normal and what's not for somebody?
Well, that's why it's not maths, it's chemistry. That's the biggest example I can give. Maths, 1+1=2. That's it. There's no arguing about that. Whereas chemistry, you have different reactions, you have different things happening, and you might not always get the same results. You have to do hundreds of tests with reactions to see and get an official result written down. And even then, it's up for debate, and people can argue about it, bicker about it, and formulate conclusions and theories. That's what body language is like. People who say that looking up and left means this, that's not always applicable. It might do, but then you have to quantify that with data and statistics. But that is, to use that as a judgment, to use that in everyday life is nonsense. And these are where the myths arise. You mentioned 90%. They say around 70 to 80% is in the nonverbal communication. But then again, you have people who have cases of autism who may not exhibit so much nonverbal communication. It might just be purely verbal. So it's all about the baseline. It's all about the individual that you're looking at. And this is where it kind of becomes a gray area that people don't like. And that's why people don't like body language that much, is because some people might just go completely against what you're saying because people are like that. People are different. So it's not universal for everyone. That's why I always say in my videos, it commonly means this. And you have to take into account how many times they do this. Is this just a natural trait that they do? So when I was looking at the Logan Paul video, he grabbed hold of the wall, which is a grounding behavior. It means he's lacking in confidence. But someone might just naturally do that all of the time. And also putting arms on the wall could be a dominant stance. It could be intimidation or something like that. So you really have to understand the person, the situation, the whole context to make a conclusion. And then it's not fact. You can't say it's fact. It potentially is, and it's like a likelihood. It's why I never deal with finites. I don't say it means this. I mean, it suggests this, and you have to be careful with that, I think.
Because that's definitely something I got sort of annoyed at, was when you read other articles, people were saying, nope, that's what it means. It's 100% this. And, it's like you've mentioned, is I've got friends who have, they're on different spectrums, for example, like autism and stuff. And you can see that what is normal or what is normally accepted isn't always what somebody with those kind of conditions will do.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always mean it. It's, I was really interested in the art of micro expressions, for example. Everybody always assumes folded arms, or, if my legs are crossed and my foot's away from you, it means I'm not interested in what you're saying, or something like that. Can you go into a little bit about micro expressions and how they are used in body language, and what should we look out for?
So micro expressions tend to occur when we don't really want to give away body language. So people who, well, we all know what a micro expression is. It's a short expression, a leakage. That's what it's commonly known as, of body language that we don't want out there. So most people who want to try and hide their body language, it becomes a micro expression because they do it and then they instantly stop doing it. So you'll find with serial killers and stuff like that, they'll do stuff very, very quickly and then they'll stop it. And that really provides a very, very good insight into the psyche of the person, because I can't remember the example of what I was looking at, but someone smiled briefly in one of the videos that I analyzed. I can't remember which one it was, but they stopped it straight away. So that shows that they were actually quite pleased with the situation. And then given the context of the situation, you can bring that into account. So why were they smiling? Why were they happy with the situation? If it was a situation where they were maybe harming someone, you can see that they took pleasure in harming someone. And that's where micro expressions are really useful. I wouldn't give them as much credit as people tend to with micro expressions, because firstly, they're rare compared to other things, and they are kind of wishy-washy. It's very difficult because they happen for such a short amount of time. It might, and they tend to happen with the mouth. It's very difficult to formulate a conclusion from that. The best cues that I look at are the feet, because we all have to stand up. When we're standing up, we all have to have our feet in a certain position. Mm-hmm. And the feet are the most reliable sources of body language, in my opinion. It's staggering, actually, how easy it is to read people's feet. I can go into the details of foot positioning if you want.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Because that's something, we're always in business meetings or we're in dates or things like that. Is there things we can do that we can quickly look at and identify without just saying staring like we've got a foot fetish?
Yeah. So I noticed this when I was in college, people's feet positioning. Before lunch, everyone was gathered around in their circles of people. There were like hundreds of people there talking with each other. And you could look at the feet and I used to just sit and watch. It looked a bit strange, but you'd see who was in the situation, who was the most popular, because what tends to happen is your feet are like a V position. So they point forward, and it tends to be, if you drew a line pointing from the ends of the feet, that tends to be where their focus is. Now, obviously, you're not going to have people standing with their feet sideways, because that's, you couldn't stand like that. But it tends to be that where your feet are positioned, what they're pointing towards signifies what they're interested in. So if someone comes into a group of people, so say you've got 3 people standing in front and their feet are narrowly pointing towards the 3 of them, and an extra person comes, and within, say, a minute or two, they don't adjust their feet positioning to encompass that extra person, that would suggest, and notice I say suggest, that person isn't that interesting to them. Whereas if you have, say, your best friend comes into the group, you notice that their feet instantly adjust to put them pointing towards that person. It's mainly so that they can turn their torso and talk to them, but it's a good indicator of whether they do that. I mean, it takes me back to the Sherlock story where it was the dog. I can't remember which one it was, but it was the fact that the dog didn't bark when the killer came in. That gave away who the killer was, because it was someone the dog knew. Now, it's what didn't happen. So if their feet didn't adjust to the new person, that's a suggestion, and then you can make conclusions from that. So that's where body language, it requires sort of a keen mind to make conclusions and formulate theories as to why didn't he adjust his feet when that person came in, or why did he adjust his feet, and how that plays into the context of the situation. The interesting one is actually when the people's feet are pointing away. So what you'll have is, if someone's been in a conversation for a long amount of time and they're not really interested and they kind of just want to go, and in the Loki video, I'm not sure if you watched it, but I showed the perfect example of this. Their feet will point where they want to travel. So you'll notice people will be standing with their left foot pointing forwards to whoever they're talking to, but their right foot will be spread quite far away, pointing outwards. And you think, well, why are their feet like this? That's such an odd position to have if you're in the group. But what that means is that they want to travel in that direction. It's as simple as that. And I've been in conversations with people, business meetings and things like that, and I notice the feet positioning, and I know they're going to leave in a second. And then they make it instantly, when I think that, they instantly leave the situation and walk off in that direction. So you can test these things, and it's surprisingly accurate.
Because that's what you used to always see was articles on BuzzFeed about Jedi mind tricks, and it's look at somebody's feet and this is exactly what it means if they're facing that way or that way. And some of them would work on a regular basis, but do you go back to the baseline? Would you need to watch what was happening previous to that, or can you really kind of gauge after a few minutes in a group dynamic like that?
So the feet positioning, I say, are the easiest because they're so simple to understand. There's only so much body language you can do with your feet, because they have to be standing still, because that's how you stand. Otherwise, you'd fall over. So they have to be positioned, and there are only a certain number of positions they can be. So what it does is it allows you to it increases the accuracy of your observations, because there's fewer variables, there's fewer positions the feet can be in. So you can, and again, you can't say definitively, but if someone's in a group conversation and no one adjusts their feet to point towards that person, to sort of encompass that person in their feet positioning, you can tell roughly that person's not that interesting in the group, so they don't want to engage with that person. And I've noticed it when I've joined groups of people haven't adjusted their feet, and then you notice from other cues, so how they talk and stuff, they don't look at you, they don't try and include you in their conversation, and then with those extra variables you can then understand, okay, they don't really want to talk to me. And then that's when you leave and go somewhere else. And understanding body language allows you to tell that a lot sooner than if you didn't know body language. But it's accurate. It's more accurate with the feet, I think.
Because that's where I always struggle sometimes, is like when I'm like in video, for example, is I always feel stress about being on video. And sometimes I feel like there's a standing joke in my family that when I concentrate, my eyebrows come together and I look like a serial killer. And I don't always feel like I'm being natural. Like I feel like my hands are always kind of together because I don't want them to show that I'm agitated or annoyed, and I sometimes think I've got this face on that looks like I'm not interested. And I think this is the thing that's put me off about doing video is it's what I look like. And I'm worried of looking weak, or I'm worried about looking disinterested, or
yeah. I think that's because there's a lack of, because you're not actually there physically with a person. There's a lack of communication. You can't see my full body. I can't see your full body, so I don't know what you're thinking, and you don't know what I'm thinking, and that can give you anxiety over that. It's why we pace around the room when we're on a phone call with someone, is because we are talking to them, but we have no body language feedback. So we get a bit stressed and anxious because we're like, hang on a sec, I can't see what this person's doing. Do they like me? Do they not like me? What are they thinking? And consciously, you may not be thinking about this, but your subconscious is telling you, okay, you need to walk around, you need to get rid of some of the stress. And that's why we pace often up and down. It's to reduce anxiety. I'd say it's a pacifying behavior. But yeah, it is really interesting. And I think poker players are a key example of this. They're all about. I don't actually play poker, surprisingly. Everyone says I should because I'd be good at it, apparently.
I would have thought you'd be cleaning up.
But everyone asks, well, I play poker, so what should I do to not give anything away? And I always tell them, the main thing is to conceal your body language. If you're sitting like this, you will always give something off. I don't know how long a game of poker goes on, an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, whatever. But to not give away any nonverbal communication in that time, it's impossible. You just can't. You will always do something. Even if you actively think about not doing it, you will always give something away. It's just how it is. So I always say to them that you want to conceal your mouth. You want to make sure your hands aren't doing anything. So I can actually show you the best position for poker if anyone plays poker who's watching this. But the first thing to do is get your hands out of action, because your hands basically give away so much information with what they do, whether they fidget or move or anything like that. So you want to interlock your fingers. And what that does is it stops your hands from doing other things. You want to put your thumbs together. And then what you want to do is lean in. So what that means is, when you're in a situation, your body language, your proxemics, so the distance between you and the person, changes. So say, I don't know, someone deals you get a good hand. You see the good hand, you instantly lean in. People could take that as you're interested, you're leaning forward, you're putting yourself closer to the stressor because you're confident because you've got a good hand in cards. So that people will glean that information. So the best thing to do is just always be leaning in. Don't give them any information. So what they say is to put your elbows on the table, close your interlock your fingers, put your thumbs together, and put your hand on your chin, and then use your hands to cover your mouth, so you're not giving anything away, and then just stare down. That's the best position for poker, because what it does is it stops your hands from fidgeting. It stops your mouth, if you do any micro expressions, from doing anything. It means that you're always leaning in, so you're not leaning out in, which could give away information as to how good your hand is and things like that. And it basically just stops you from giving away information. That's the only way you can really conceal your body language. But then again, people will know that you're trying to conceal your body language. So it doesn't work if you're a serial killer, because they'll be suspecting you then.
I mean, does that work in sort of work situations? Because I've noticed that since we've gone to COVID working from home, a lot of people come on to Zoom calls, Microsoft Teams, and it's almost like there's this, I don't know, this fight, in debate, because they're in their home situation, but they're on a work call. And it's almost like they forget that they can be seen and their eyes are rolling, or they're not happy at work. How should we advise? Would that be the stance for people during these kind of work situations, or does that show lack of confidence when you're presenting? Say we were discussing this just now.
Yeah. So again, and this is a big debate with body language that I'm sure we can touch on later, but it's, if you have this advantage, body language, what people are basically thinking, and you know what signals you're giving off. That means that you have the responsibility to control that. So it's whether or not you enact it. Now, if I'm on a Zoom call with people and stuff like that, I will judge, okay, well, who am I with? Is it like, do I have to look good, or is it just neutral? Like, am I just talking with mates? Am I doing some work, but it's not necessarily important for me to look good in this situation? You take that into context. Now, if you're in a job interview, say, for example, over Zoom, you don't want to be doing what I told you, because that just looks wrong. You're hiding your body language. People will think that's a bit strange. Why is he doing that? So you want to really change, adapt. It's called situational adaptiveness. You want to adapt based on the situation you're in. So if you're in a work environment, you want to be confident. You want to impress. So you want to be non-confrontational. You don't want to be dominant, but you also don't want to be submissive. You want to show respect and not arrogant. So I wouldn't sit there with my fingers steepled like this, just staring directly at them, because that shows basically that I'm arrogant. And although they won't know body language, they'll get the impression from their subconscious, this person seems arrogant, this person's too dominant, I need someone. People want to be surrounded by people submissive to them, who won't be a threat to them. So a big thing with and I'm sure this was one of your questions, like how to give off a good impression. When you're in a work environment or on Zoom or something, and you're being interviewed for a job, say, you want to be non-confrontational. You don't want to be aggressive. You want to look interested. You want to seem submissive to the person you're talking to, but you also want to seem slightly confident. And you can choose to manipulate your body language to accommodate that. And I've done that numerous times in different situations. And it's all about you and what you want to do. So if you're just chatting with mates, I wouldn't change your body language, because then you spend your time thinking about your body language and not actually talking to your mates. So it depends on the context, really.
Because that is definitely something I've done, is when I go into interviews, I've kind of got like a structure of how I want to sit and what I do with my hands and how I want to address it. Like I want to make sure I'm looking at the different interviewers the same amount of time and making eye contact, but not too much. And there is some standard things. But
so I can give you the data on, because they did a study. I can't remember what the study was, but the data, everyone's like, oh, how much eye contact should I make? There's actually stats to show you how much you should make. when someone's talking, so for me now, what on average you should be making 75% of the time eye contact with me, and then the rest you should be looking away. That's standard. If you're making more than 75% eye contact, it seems like you're a bit creepy. If you're making less, it seems like you're disinterested. When you're speaking, so for me now, 50% of the time is adequate. So I could be looking away, but so long as I'm looking at you 50% of the time, your subconscious will see that as normal and see that as that I'm interested and want you in the conversation. So just stick to that if you're nervous about, am I making too much eye contact? That's the general rule of thumb.
And do you think this is, you mentioned it as reading body language has been like a superpower, and, the amazing things we can pick off. And I watched one of your videos where there was the Joker, and he was confessing to have killing the guys on the underground, and, the crowd were booing, and you were on about how he had a micro expression of a smile towards the Barry, the presenter, because he still wanted to like him, and he was proud of what he'd done. And you actually could pinpoint the moment from the acting of when he decided to kill him by the betrayal. Yeah. And it was this amazing thing. And I started watching other scenes and picking up such amazing things. But why do you think people don't? Is it that we don't understand that you can get better at this? Or is it that we've become a society where we're just spoon-fed information and we've forgotten to trust our guts because we can't understand why we think that person's creepy or that person's been a bit weird? Or
so the reason why they say trust your gut is it's so important. Your gut is the only, unless you've studied body language, your gut is the only reliable judge of a person that you have, because that's the only thing looking at these body language cues and interpreting it. It's not very good. It's your subconscious. But it's the only thing you've got unless you know body language. So I can give you examples of when I've manipulated my own body language to my advantage, and it's staggering how good it is. the psychology behind it is insane. So I'll give you an example of when I was in the debating society at school. We were doing a debate. I hadn't prepared for it at all, really. And it was like a good 70 or 80 people in the audience, and there was 4 people on each side and a moderator in the center. And the way we used to do debates, it was like it was very aggressive. It wasn't just people would speak, then the next people would speak. It would be like it was basically a civilized argument. You'd have the moderator choosing the points, and you'd be going back and forth addressing each other's points, which I love. We were getting hammered, absolutely hammered. And the way it works is, before the debate, the audience vote on the motion, so whether they agree with it or disagree with it. And at the end, they vote again. And based on how much the vote swings, that shows who was better at conveying the arguments. I had no preparation. I was losing the debate. I had no idea what I was talking about, pretty much. But I knew body language. So I sat there with my fingers steepled like this, leaning in, and I made eye contact with the audience, and then briefly looked at the people I was competing with. And I kept looking at the audience, kept nodding my head, kept smiling, but my fingers were steepled. And that's a sign of strong confidence, and also leaning in is. And people came up to me after and said I was so confident. And we actually won the motion because I think it was partly the body language. When I said my points, even though they were quite weak points, because I looked really confident when saying it, they kind of bought into it and they kind of agreed with it. So it kind of manipulated what they saw and how much they trusted the information I was giving off.
I mean, is that then would be a good tip, do you think, for people giving like work presentations, is to adopt these kind of positions of power? Or
it depends. It depends on context, because if you're not competing with anyone and you're just giving points in an interview or a meeting that you're having, you don't want to come across as arrogant, because no one likes someone who's arrogant, but you want to come across as confident. So steepling of the fingers, you should do that, but don't do it for the entire time. Change your body language. Leaning in is a very, very good thing, because it shows you're interested. You're putting yourself closer to the stressor. So if there was a predator, you wouldn't go closer to it, because that means that you'd get damaged, you'd get injured, killed maybe. So if you're leaning in, it shows that you're willing to confront it. You're willing to fight it, and that shows confidence. It's a power move, basically. So, if you're in a meeting and someone disagrees with your point, lean in, steeple your fingers, and then try and talk to them and say, okay, well, what do you think? Whilst your fingers are steepled, whilst you're leaning in. And that will show to everyone else that you're willing to stand up for your ideas, you're willing to stand up for what you said, and that you're very confident in what you said. If you just lean back and just don't address it and look a bit shy, do some distancing behaviors, then people won't trust your opinions, really. That's the example I can give.
Because on the flip side of that, you did a couple of videos recently on catching predators, and you were mentioning about how they were using self-soothing behaviors or distancing themselves through their eyes, or the actual physical distance they had, and the kind of reaction to even how the speaker's reaction to what they were saying, and how it changed them without the speaker truly being aware of it. What could you go into a little bit about self-soothing? Because I've noticed this far more since I've started watching your videos of little things people do, and it's amazing when you see it. But how would you explain a self-soothing or a distancing behavior if you had to sort of sum it up? Because your videos are you identify even the smallest ones, and it blows me away now that I see them. Could you explain a little bit about that, please?
So I'll have to explain firstly what body language is. Now, I know we know what it is, but why do we give off body language? Surely it would be better not to give anything away so that no one knows what we're thinking. But we're pack animals at the end of the day. That's what we are. And if no one gave off body language cues, no one would have any idea what anyone else felt. So you could have really, really, really annoyed someone, so much so that they want to kill you. But if they're not giving off any body language cues, you don't know that you're annoying them. You don't know that they're going to hit you soon because you've said something that's hurt them. So that's why people get angry. People give off these cues, and it's why we all do it. It's to help each other. It's to let everyone else know what we're thinking, what we're feeling, and don't say this because it's offensive. Don't do that because it makes me angry and I might hurt you because of it. So that's why we do it. Now, what pacifying behaviors are and self-soothing pacifying behaviors are a way. It's all in the limbic system. So what that is the part of the brain that regulates stress. So when we experience a stressor or a potential stressor, so someone or something, a question maybe, did you murder someone? And if you did murder someone, your limbic system will be flooding your body with just stress. So what you need to do is control that. So pacifying behaviors are ways to control that. So you'll notice if you're angry or there's a loud bang and you get startled, you'll feel the need to scratch everywhere. You'll feel actual tingling. So what that is your limbic system trying to calm you down. You have to scratch that to get rid of it, to calm yourself down, to help you in a situation. People do that when they're nervous. It shows an increase in anxiety. They have to bring these levels down. There's no reason why we need to do it other than to give off signals to other people for the reason what I said, we're pack animals. But we can use these observations to see what causes the reaction. So, and that's why baseline is so important. If you have a serial killer who is always calm, cool, collected, just sitting there confident, and then all of a sudden you ask them, did you kill this person? And all of a sudden they do pacifying behaviors. It shows that they have an increase in anxiety. And that increase in anxiety is what you basically use to make your conclusions. Why did they have a sudden increase in anxiety when you ask them that question? Now, it could be that it's just a question that would, if you were asked, are you a killer? You'd be a bit anxious, wouldn't you, if a police officer asked you that?
Yes,
so that's when it's context. You have to understand it because you have to understand when people get nervous, when people don't. And if someone's always nervous, you can't then use a pacifying behavior as an example or a reliable source of information because they've always been doing them. So that's why you have to see the baseline. It's like a line. And then if there's a huge deviation, that's when you look at it and go, why did that happen? What were they asked at that point? Who did they encounter at that point? And then you can use that to make your conclusion. So these predators, they've been, there was the one I did, the first predator video that I did. And when they confront him about his username that he was using to basically talk to underage girls, he instantly does a distancing behavior and then he folds his arms. He tries to pacify himself. The fact that he instantly did that when that name was said shows that he has a link to that name. Because if say someone said a random name that he'd never heard before, why would he be anxious? Because it's got nothing to do with him. So that's where it's important to understand. So he did a distancing behavior, which is the way of basically us putting distance between ourselves and a stressor, and then a self-soothing pacifying behavior to calm himself down due to the increase in stress from that. That's basically what a pacifying behavior is and how we can use that to formulate conclusions. And then it's just all about context, really, on top of that.
Because that's what I really liked about it was, when, say, the video of just before the Joker kills Mary, there was a point where you were talking about what his micro-expression meant, how Mary's face had gone down and what that was implying, but he'd actually leaned forward because he wasn't scared of him at the time, even though he had just admitted killing 3 guys on the ground. And then you mentioned about the guy at the end of the couch, the other guest who was actually folding his arms, self-soothing, and it was this kind of you really made me understand the scene it better, but how it changes from person to person, how one person can be more confident, but how it can affect other people. Is self-soothing behaviors always a negative thing? Is there ever a point where they don't show insecurity, low self-esteem, or something like that?
Again, it's context. Say in our brains we have the sympathetic nervous system that basically chooses the 3 responses: the fight, flight, freeze response. When we've heard a bang, so you hear a massive bang behind you and you hear some people running into your house, you're not going to have time to do self-soothing behaviors because the response to that sympathetic nervous system takes precedent. So you go into the fight, flight, or freeze response. You instantly do that. It's only after something has happened that you actually experience these pacifying behaviors or self-soothing behaviors. I touched on it in the Joker Subway video. It's called the cold battle personality, but again, it's a very underdeveloped field, so there aren't standardized terms for these things. he was nervous. He was doing pacifying behaviors, but then the second he pulls out the revolver and shoots the people, he's cold. He's completely not doing any behaviors. That's because his sympathetic nervous system has basically chosen the fight response, and he is focused solely on that. It's only after he shoots the guy in the leg and he runs away that he then starts to do these pacifying behaviors again. He scratches his head. He looks around. He exhales very, very quickly. It's kind of, and that's what I'm interested in, because it's such an underdeveloped field. Is why he didn't exhibit those behaviors and what causes him to start exhibiting them after he's encountered the stressor. That's what fascinates me, but it shows that it's not always, they don't have to happen then and there. There are situations where it will be a delayed reaction, basically.
Because that was something I really liked from your videos, was I started noticing every interaction, there's some sort of power dynamic, there's some sort of give or take or release of stress or emotion. And it was like, I remember watching how people were shaking my hand, like at work, and the distance they came in, how they held it, how they shook it, the pressure and what it meant, or where their feet went. And you got to a point where you're almost forgetting to listen to what the person was saying because you were looking at how they were interacting.
Yeah.
It's been said, I don't know if this is a cheesy phrase or not, but the eyes are the window to the soul. Would you agree with that? Are the eyes a good indicator, do you think?
I would say they're decent, but not as good as people say, really. Eyes really show distancing behaviors, but all an eye is a ball. So it's about the positioning of that, whether it's up, down, or maintaining strong eye contact. I mean, the only things you can really get are looking to the ground, which is a sign of either submission, guilt, remorse. Looking up, which is a sign of recollection, or distancing behavior, so looking away. Those are and obviously the amount of eye contact. Those are only really what you can get from the eyes. Hands give a lot of information. People's distance gives a lot of information, but I wouldn't. It's one of the big ones, but it's not the biggest, I'd say, in terms of information.
It's time for a quick break. There are millions of potential products to buy, so how do you know which ones are worth your hard-earned money? Simple. You go to nextlevelguy.com/affiliates and explore those that will transform and improve your life. You'll find deals, listener exclusives, and special offers with some great companies. Recommendations are 100% honest and only on items Ian has tried or believes in. The companies showcased will make you a better man in all areas of your life. Simply go to nextlevelguy.com/affiliates and level up.
So how would we, how can we make sure that we're always got like sort of open, warm, friendly communication? Is there a kind of, because you see these different things where, if you show your the sole of your foot in Thailand, for example, it's offensive. If you make certain gestures with your hand, I think it's like what we would say rock and roll gesture. In some societies, it's offensive. Yeah. Is there kind of like a universal language, body language, do you think? Or does it really depend context, culture, gender, those sorts of things?
So this is actually an interesting thing that I wanted to talk about, is the sort of the socialization. Now, in psychology, which I've studied as well, there's the sort of biological reasons and then the cultural reasons. So biological would be, the limbic system exhibiting pacifying behaviors, but then the cultural will be what we've learned. So perfect example of this, I had a former Marine who was a neighbor of mine, and I had a conversation with him, and I noticed instantly his body language was totally different to what I'd ever encountered before. We all have personal space. He was right on the edge of the personal space. He maintained direct eye contact with me. His posture was strong, upright. That's because he was taught that in the military. He was taught basically to do this. And that's become so ingrained in his head that was his common body language. That's how he presents himself to everyone. And that's something he's learned. So it's obviously our culture can, or our environment can impact how we exhibit our body language. But then again, also that people do exhibit pacifying behaviors. So there is a universal biological element to that. And I think it's really interesting to see how our environment, how our upbringing can influence our body language. I think it's it's maybe 50-50. I'm not sure. I'd have to look up the data on that and do tests, but we all have limbic systems, we all have sympathetic nervous systems, and they do their jobs. They might do their jobs more or less. You might have more pacifying behaviors than average or less than average, because that's what, IQ varies so much. IQ is kind of natural, but it can be influenced as well by upbringing. If you do loads of crosswords, loads of puzzles and things like that, you can increase your IQ by a couple of points, but you're still going to be roughly where you were born, where your biology determined you to be. So yeah, I think part of it's biological, part of it's social, I'd say.
Because it's definitely something, like, for example, like, this is the first interview where I've kind of made sure my eyes aren't wandering as much as they normally do. Because I always keep my question prompts to the other, like, half of the screen. And I didn't want to be seen to be kind of, like, and it's... You start becoming aware of, like, the little ticks, the flicks of the pen you do, and, like, what that portrays to other people. Does it change? Have you really noticed a kind of difference with the way males and females? Because something I was always brought up was that you treated everybody the same. The janitor to the CEO to whoever it was. You were polite. You always, you treat them like a human being. And then I see friends where you can actually see them change if they're speaking to a waiter because they're ready to shout at them for getting their order wrong or something, whereas they almost forget. It's like they take the power position, and it's, is that a good sign of watching how somebody reacts to people in, like, these kind of jobs, do you think, of what the person's like as a whole?
Yeah, I think there are 2 points to have from that. Firstly, and this is where I have to tread very, very carefully because you can easily be accused of being sexist. It's all about situational adaptivity. So given our situation, say you have a really confident person and then you have a slightly less confident person. So you have maybe a school jock and then you have just a normal person. That school jock or whatever will be more confident, more dominant than the normal person. So when they interact, there will be that power dynamic. That person will clearly be stronger and more dominant than the other person. That's just how it is. But then if you take that other person and put them in a room with more submissive people, that person will become the dominant person and will exhibit the traits of the jock, but to these people. So it's all about context. If you have someone who's very submissive, they could still be the most dominant person in a room if you put them in a room filled with more submissive people than them. Now, I've coined the term dominant and submissive because it's the easiest way to explain the power dynamic. Dominant being people see themselves as more capable to deal with the threat than someone else. That's pretty much what it boils down to, is how much we're afraid. It is fear, basically, how much we're afraid of someone. If you have some really big, tough person coming to you, clearly your subconscious will go, okay, that person's strong. I have to be more cautious about how I interact with them because they could do serious physical damage to me. Whereas if you see someone who's submissive or who's weaker than you, you're going to think, well, I don't need to be as cautious because I am stronger than them. So even if they did try and attack me, I could defend myself. And that's really what it boils down to. Now, the fine line where you often get like bordering on sexism is when you bring males and females into it, because it's a scientific fact that females have less muscle mass. They're not as strong. So often is the case that men will see themselves as more dominant than women, than a female. Now, that's not always the case. If you have female bodybuilders, obviously you're going to be submissive to them because they're stronger physically, and our subconscious judges that. So this is why you tend to have women exhibiting certain behaviors and men exhibiting certain behaviors when they're interacting with each other. And that's important to understand, and also not to then exaggerate, because then you get into sexism then where people will say, I don't know. But yeah, I try and shy away from that area.
Because that was something I was interested in, was like, you almost see it in other books where people are saying it's a woman's role or it's their prerogative to do this, and you think, yeah, I mean, that's just more about society than it does anything else, I suppose. And it's quite sad that we raise women to go into those roles where I'd rather get to know the person, but it's a sad state of affairs.
It is sad, yeah, and I think that, again, I have to be incredibly careful. But if you look around the world, it tends to be patriarchal. Men tend to be have higher positions in society and higher roles. Women didn't get the right to vote in many, many countries and still don't have it in a lot of countries. I think that just boils down to the biology and the fact that we haven't become that civilized yet. Biologically, women on average have less muscle mass, so they are physically not as strong as males. Now, I think what that has happened in less developed societies is these patriarchal roles still exist because men are physically stronger on average, so they're able to sort of be dominant, and it's not right. And I think as society develops and we become more conscious, we tend to sort of understand that that's purely biological and that shouldn't impede women from having high positions or positions in government or even the right to vote or drive cars. I mean, yeah, I think that's kind of, we have to look past our animal side, which is, it's the primitive side of us, judging people because it's a subconscious. And I think we need to develop and grow past that and put that to bed. And I think that's why sexism exists. So, to be honest, around the world,
I mean, it's certainly one of those topics. You can't help but roll your eyes when you hear people say men and women jobs and all this kind of things. And you think we'd be past that by now, but it's like you're saying, it's the way our societies are set up, like the cultural impact as much as of what's happening in our brains. So,
yeah.
What would you say to people about being like, there's a lot of lying, there's a lot of deceit in your videos where you watch people and you say, well, he's doing this because he's dealing with the stress of this, or he's dealing, it's how do we, I just realized how that sounded. How do we identify lying, deceitful behavior, that sort of thing? Is it again looking at the context and then looking at the spike in how they speak, or the self-soothing, or the distance they make figuratively or literally, or is there a kind of standard way we can tell?
Yeah, the easiest way to tell, and it's easier in mundane situations because, again, as I said, if you ask someone, did you kill someone, even an ordinary person who's completely innocent will find that to be anxious. They'll get anxious by it because it's a strong question. But if you say to someone, did you steal the cookies from the cookie jar, people aren't going to do pacifying behaviors if they didn't do it because it's just a cookie. But if you ask someone who did, you'd expect to see pacifying behaviors. Now, often in the real world, the biggest sort of lies that people tell are if they've cheated with someone. That's the sort of the biggest one. And that's why I try and react to cheaters as well, because it's very important to look at. If you just ask them direct, look for distancing behaviors, look for pacifying behaviors. That's like the important thing. And especially in relationships, you'll know the baseline because you've been with them for such a long time. You'll know what they're like. And it's why people get gut feelings that people are cheating on them. It's because they've seen these nonverbal cues and they've sort of understood it with their subconscious. They don't know why, but they just feel that way. Look for pacifying behaviors. If they are touching their face or folding their arms or scratching or fidgeting and stuff like that, these are pacifying behaviors and shows that they're going through heightened anxiety. And the reason why they're going through heightened anxiety is because you've found them out. You've found that they are the liar. If someone is completely innocent and you ask them a not that strong question, obviously not like, did you kill someone? If they were innocent, they wouldn't be doing these pacifying behaviors because they know they're innocent and they're not afraid. Distancing behaviors, then again, are another perfect example. If you're looking at someone and you ask them, did you do it? And they look away, it's not as obvious as just look away, but they'll keep looking away with their eyes. They'll lean back in the chair. They'll try and distance with their feet even. If you pair these two together, so they do pacifying behaviors and distancing behaviors, you can say with not certainty, but you can say they're probably lying to you. And that's kind of the easiest way to tell if someone's lying to you. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Because it's like your the video when you were observing Amber Heard's testimonial in Court TV, and it was amazing how you'd picked up on the fact that she kept doing that and like quickly looking away from the person asking the questions because she didn't want to kind of deal with it, and how you noticed she immediately went to what she had been told to rehearse or the answer, and how she was always looking at the person who'd helped her for the support. And that, I mean, when I was listening to it, I was thinking, it sounds off. And then I watched, like when I seen it on TV, and then when I watched your video, it kind of went, right. And then you notice the how you look at people. Like my mom could read me like a book. Like, and I used to, like, she would just go, yeah, right. And it's like you're saying, it's the relationship and the relationship of the group dynamics and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What are you looking for in terms of like dating? Because I mean, I know everybody's thinking body language, dating, pickup. Is this sort of thing? You hear people say a girl plays with her hair, she's interested. It's not really. That could be just a little, like a habit she's got. Is there such a thing as indicators of interest, as pickup used to call it? Is there things that we can look at for attraction or?
Yeah, and I think this is the misconception with pacifying behaviors and emotional stress in the limbic system is emotional stress can be positive as well. So, and this is important. If a girl likes you and you're with her and you're communicating with her, she will be afraid of your judgments of her because she doesn't want you to see her in a bad light. So you'll compliment her or something like that. She will exhibit pacifying behaviors. So touching of the hair. Now that might be a habit, and that's why you have to understand the baseline. But touching of the hair, touching of the chest, scratching, fidgeting, these are pacifying behaviors, and these can be used to tell if someone likes you. If you compliment someone and then she does a pacifying behavior, that is a good sign that what you've said has caused her some stress. She's nervous about it because she values your opinion. That's kind of why we do these things when we're anxious. And it's the same with men as well. Men do this when in a relationship because there's something at stake. When you're communicating with a woman and she likes you, she's very, very nervous about what she gives off because she doesn't want to ruin the chances to be in a relationship with you because that's what's causing her stress. She's stressed about that. So if she does these pacifying behaviors, it shows that she values what you think. If she wasn't interested in you at all, she doesn't care what you think of her. So why would she get nervous when you start talking about her or asking her questions? Unless obviously you're being creepy and threatening. But that's why the context is important. But if you're talking to someone and you compliment them and they are clearly like smile and things like that, but then they do pacifying behaviors, that's a very good sign that they like you because they value your opinion. They're afraid of what you think of them in a good way. They're nervous about what your judgments of them because they don't want to look bad to you. That's why it's kind of, those are the easiest ways to sort of pick up on someone who's interested in you, and eye contact as well.
Because that's definitely something that a lot of people sort of struggle with. It's we are told that if they do this, it means this. And you start thinking, oh, they're not doing that. Or, maybe they're just needing to go to the toilet or something like that. That's maybe stressing them about it.
I think, that's my big quarrel with these articles and some body language videos online is that they'll tell you the dumbed down version, but the dumbed down version doesn't it's like that thing, I don't know the quote, it's like, give a man a fish and you'll feed him for a day, but teach him how to fish and he'll be fed for a lifetime. That's the thing. If you tell them this one cue means that they like you, you're giving them a fish, you're giving them one thing, but then in a different context, that might not be true. They might not get fed. Whereas if you teach them pacifying behaviors and the whole background behind it, and you teach them to be able to read the judgments themselves, then all of a sudden you've taught them how to fish. They now can understand situations and infinitely get information from whatever situation they're in. I think that's why I don't like these articles. They don't explain why it happens, just purely this means this, and it doesn't work like in different contexts.
Because there's a video that you have, I'm trying to think the character. It's when the Joker kills, I think his mom has just died and two people come over.
Oh, Randall, yeah.
It's Randall, I couldn't remember his name there. And, you're discussing the fake laugh he does and how his eyes don't portray the truth.
Yeah.
The pacifying behavior he does and the lead up to him killing him. Could you go into a little bit about that? what are sort of warning signs of aggression? What are like fake laughs, of deceit, or what I mean? Is there a way to? Or is it
Yeah.
just trust your gut the way it makes you feel, like the hair stands up in the back of your neck?
Always trust your gut first, and then if you know about body language, then use that. So the biggest sign of aggression is clenched fists. People who are really aggressive will clench their fists by their side, and if you've been in an argument with someone and you see them do that, that shows that they've got to a level where they're preparing to defend themselves, they're preparing to attack you. So that's kind of like an extreme example. Fake laughs, fake smiles are easy to identify. I did a video on Logan Paul, and I find all these YouTubers fake because I'm a body language analyst. You can just see instantly, okay, that's fake. All of this is put on as a show. Smiling with the eyes is important. Basically, we can smile, but genuine pleasure includes wrinkles around your eyes. It's not actually your eyes, but it's around your eyes. That's a sign that they're genuinely going through these emotions. The whole face contorts. It all shows the expression. And you can actually see when someone's smiling, even without the mouth. But and this is the easy test you can do if you're watching a video. Pause it when they're smiling. Cover their mouth. Can you see that they're smiling without their mouth? If no, then it shows that they're actually forcing it, because it's the conscious trying to imitate the subconscious, and it doesn't understand it really. When you're going through genuine emotions, you express genuine emotions, but when you're trying to fake it and you're not an actor, you're not trained in how to do it, you do it, it looks off. You don't do it accurately. And I think that's it's easy to spot once you know how.
Because it's definitely something like I've noticed more. It's the smile doesn't meet the eyes. You see it in cashiers, you see it in people in customer care a lot more. It's the kind of, here we go, and then they put on this kind of mask, and it's like, and I can understand why you're not in those situations, but it also makes it, you pick up as a customer sometimes in people who just don't want to be there. It's when I've done a lot of customer care jobs, and I definitely want to throttle quite a few of them.
Yeah,
but, I mean, I love the way that you do your videos. Could you on a little bit about how you run your channel, like how you would do a video? Because you've done so many amazing TV shows and movies, and it really makes you appreciate these more. But how do you start taking apart a video and kind of breaking it down and understanding it and portraying it?
Okay, so the first thing I do is I watch a video. If it's a TV or movie scene, I usually know already, because I like the scenes. I choose ones that are popular because people know it, and I find when people know the scene, they'll find it more interesting learning about the breakdown. But I've been doing a lot more real world stuff recently. I look for the extreme sort of stuff because it's easier to pick out body language in that. Then what I do is I get the video and I cut it into sections, so I split it up. Maybe 8 different sections, and then I watch the first section, and I will sit there and watch the whole thing. Then I'll watch it one more time, and usually after the second viewing, I just make notes. So I write down, okay, this is it. This is an expression. I've done videos before, like the Logan Paul ones and a lot of the other ones, where I've watched it and just reacted there and then. But I like to pick up on the little details. So I will take my time and I will look at sort of the individual smaller bits and write them down. And I will do that over and over again. And then what you can sometimes do is generally build a picture. So if it's a movie scene, you can kind of make conclusions based on that. So like the Joker and Murray scene, I figured out that Joker actually only decided to kill Murray at this point because his body language up to that point wasn't showing it. And then after, it was. I just find that it's easier to do that way. And then I record myself watching the clip, just because, well, partly copyright because you have to have your face in it, but also it's quite fun with some of the crazy videos that I react to have my reaction. And then I splice in the reaction scenes that I kind of scripted and made a note of. And yeah, I find that it's best to get a lot of information then in a short amount of time to help people and not waste people's time, basically.
Because, I mean, I love how you cover such a wide variety. Has there been a particular actor or a scene that, that you've been blown away by, that it really portrays what they're kind of showing? Because I think there was a Breaking Bad scene when they had lost the money and you were talking about the emotional dysregulation. And I was
Yeah.
kind of, and it made me appreciate the scene and the level of acting. Are there particular actors or films that you think are great portrayals of body language that you've seen?
So I'll tell you my favorite TV and movie scene, like in terms of acting of all time. Um, Ironically, I haven't done them as videos yet, but I will get around to it. The number one film was Downfall. I'm sure you've heard of it, with Hitler, 1945, at the end of the war, where he's in the bunker. The acting of pretty much everyone there was so good, like so detailed. And even though it's in German, you can just see what everyone's doing. You can see that they're stressed. You can see that they're nervous about arguing with Hitler, the big evil dictator, and there's so much at stake there, and the actors do it such a good job of portraying, someone who's trying to argue against Hitler, but then knows that he's the brutal dictator and doesn't want to infringe, but then has to stand up for himself, his plan, and tries to argue. The acting is so detailed there. It blows me away. It does.
Is that the one when I'm thinking of the scene? I think you've seen it probably in plenty variations, where he's been told about the Red Army are marching, and he's crumbling, and he takes the glasses
that's
off,
the scene.
and the emotion in that, and you can pick up in all the kind of the group dynamics and the stress, and it's the little looks to each other, and it is epic.
It's that there's so much there. That is probably my greatest film scene ever in terms of acting. This is so good.
So does it in a way, does it become a negative because you can understand what it should look like? Does it spoil films and TV shows sometimes when you see wooden portrayals of it?
Yeah, and I think this is part of what I was going to say, that body language is a great skill, but it's also a curse. Being able to read this body language and watching films and stuff, when you see bad actors, it kind of ruins it, because you're like, you shouldn't really be doing that, or you should be doing more of this. So there is that element to it, but it's in real life that it's the worst, but then it's also kind of good. So like if you're talking with friends or people, you can tell when they don't like you. And it's kind of like, it's not nice to know, but then that's not really body language telling you that that's the situation. So yeah, it's kind of stressful, and also it's not nice to actively choose to manipulate your own body language to help other people, or to I was involved with politics for a bit, and the situations there are so competitive. I'm sure it's like that in work environments as well, where they have people who are nice and really friendly to you, but actually they don't care about you. They're purely doing it. And I've been in business settings where everyone's happy and smiling to each other, and not one of them cares at all about anyone. You can just see it. You can just see from their body language, they're all doing it to look cool and confident, but actually it's just fake. All of it's fake. And yeah, it's kind of difficult. It's why I hate situations like that. I've been in business situations, and I'm just like, if everyone just said what they thought, they'd be much easier than everyone just being so fake with each other.
But I suppose that goes back to like the setup. It's like you have a boss that tells you what to do. You're the underling. You're not allowed to speak back, and I suppose it comes to like cultural norms and things like that. Because I've got friends who come from Asian families, and they're completely different when you see them with their parents compared to how they are with their friends, because they've got to portray they are a certain kind, and it's. I don't know. I just wouldn't like that thing of having to pretend to be somebody that I'm not. Do you think that's why your channel has become so popular? That you're showing people, you're giving people these snippets, you're taking popular like entertainment scenes, and you're showcasing the true meaning behind everything of why we like it. You're giving us our behind the scenes into it.
Yeah, I think that part of why the channel is doing quite well is that people see their favorite TV shows or favorite movies being broken down and explained, and then in that they not only get an insight into the scene and the characters, but also learn actually that they can pick up on this themselves. It's again, it's a hidden superpower. It's, to me, body language is the single most beneficial thing you can ever study, ever, because it's how you interact with everyone. All it is communications. How do you communicate better with people? How do you read people and change and adapt to it? And I can give you another example of when it's been insanely useful. Is I was at a meeting with someone. I'm not going to go into like too specifics, but the Home Secretary of the entire country, the UK, was at that meeting, and everyone was so competitive. It was like a business environment, so everyone was like fake to each other. People were confident, arrogant, bragging and stuff. And the Secretary of State walked into the room, and so I just went. I actively made the decision. I was at the other side of the room. I walked straight across the room, made eye contact, shook his hand, and had a short conversation with him. And I did the proper handshake. Looked super confident, and the rest of the night, everyone there was coming up to me, talking to me, trying to impress me because they thought I was someone important because I'd given off that body language to them. I'd been so confident, so friendly with the guy who's so important. Everyone thought subconsciously, okay, this person must be important. It's again, caveman times pack animals. You have the group alpha. And then you have someone who's able to go up to the group alpha and hold a conversation and be jokey and stuff like that. Everyone wants to befriend the guy who did that because obviously they're in with the person who's in charge. They're friends with the person in charge, so they want to get in on their good terms because they've got mates that are the most powerful people. So it's kind of if you're at work or something, be friendly with the boss, be confident. If you're being interviewed for something, go straight to the interviewer, shake their hand and stuff. If it's like a group interview or something, you want to be the most confident, the most friendly, dominant person there. And it's how you instantly get up the top of sort of the pecking order. Everyone says 5 or 7 seconds is what you use to make an impression of someone. If in that time you see them just be super confident, super up there, everyone will see you that way forever. Basically, it's
It's because what they used to say about dating. If you went in and there was a girl surrounded by a bunch of guys, go and befriend the guys as much as the girls because they would look at who the group accepted more. Even if they liked you, and it sounded sinister at the time, but I kind of understand it now about how the group can affect the dynamics of who they allow in, and like you said, there's great ways to use it. That was something I really liked about your channel was the in depth that you went into. But how do you get over this? Because in COVID, people are now coming thinking, right, I want to achieve this. I'm fed up of not living my dreams. I'm going to start a YouTube channel. I'm going to go for a better job, whatever it is. How do you get over the fear of going out your comfort zone? Like how did you overcome the fear of recording yourself? Because I've always done audio. Video terrifies me because I'm always worried about how I'll look. What advice would you give about that kind of situation of presenting yourself more normally, I suppose, or more confidently?
I suppose there's two questions there. Like, how do you find the confidence to do stuff on your own and put yourself out there on YouTube and stuff, and how you do it in a social situation? When I was in school, I would force, and I read this rule. I don't know where it's from, so I can't give credit, but it was basically like, if anyone asks for volunteers or asks for anything, always say yes. No matter what even if you're the most incredibly nervous person out there, always say yes. Always put your hand up. And if you can live by that rule and just force yourself to do it, force yourself to take every single opportunity, even if you're terrified, it will massively help you. I run a company, and I was invited to come to this thing in London, and they needed an extra speaker for this event, and there were hundreds of people there. It was the CEO of the UK Space Agency was there. People who had put rovers on the moon were there speaking at this event, and there was one seat available, and I run a company, and I lived by the philosophy, so I said yes, and I was on stage at 18 years old with these incredibly important people, and it was the best, like one of the best days of my life. I was rocking it. Everyone came out to talk to me. It was amazing. The amount of people I met, the popularity was just insane, and that's because I said yes. I was terrified. I wasn't qualified. I wasn't anything, but I said yes, and I I sort of faked it until I made it. And this actually comes to a quote that I read from Napoleon, which is, "Power is in the presence of power." You don't have to have any power at all, but if you look powerful, you are automatically powerful, even though you're not. If you fake confidence, you are confident, because all confidence is how people see you. It's not really if you're confident or not, it's how other people think you are. That's what matters. So it's, if you can fake it, you are it, basically. And that's what I kind of do for everything.
I love that, because they used to always say, act as if, like always believe, you pretend you're confident, and then you will eventually become that way, because your body goes, well, okay, you must be feeling confident, so I must be confident, And
Yeah.
I think it was Gary Vaynerchuk, he was saying about the might as well law, where you just go, well, I might as well just go do that. And that's the way I was always brought up, was, if somebody gives you an opportunity, go for it. If somebody needs to clerk a meeting, to do this, to volunteer for something, because you never know where it can go, and the connections and the relationships. But which of your videos are you most proud of? Is there ones that you would advise somebody who's coming new to this to come and check out? That, which ones blow you away, or are you most proud of?
I like the real world sort of videos where I actually am able to glean a lot of information and actually uncover the story behind why someone's acting a certain way, or what's happening. So in terms of educational videos, I'd say probably the cop one I did recently. That's one of my favorite ones, where I basically just explain why this cop gets out his gun on this innocent person who hasn't done anything wrong, and why he did it, and the body language he's giving off. I like it when there's a complete explanation as to why he did it, what behaviors he did. And it was a classic example, again, with one of the predator hunting videos that I did, exposing predators. The first one I ever did, that's another one I'm really proud of, because I just felt like I nailed it. Everything was just textbook example of pacifying behaviors, distancing behaviors, and it was just perfectly presented by the guy, and I think I picked up on it quite well. I also like the crime case that I did, but that wasn't body language related, because that took a lot of work. I did a lot of research into that. So yeah, I think those videos are probably my favorite ones that I've ever done. The film ones are good. I like the film ones, obviously, but I like it when it's just, there's so much information and you pick up on it and you can just effectively say, this person is doing this, 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 and this for these reasons. And there's no concern about being wrong, really. Most of my videos, I'm like, it could be, couldn't, and I'll say it as a thing. But those ones, I was like, I'm pretty sure this is what it is. So yeah, that's it, basically.
So how do you think running the channel has changed you? After seeing thousands of examples, and the minute detail you can break it down into, the feedback, the comments, etc., what do you think it's taught you about social interactions, and has it changed you in any way, do you think?
So running the YouTube channel, it's kind of spooky. I did some quick maths based on my viewership, and it says that at any given point during the day, about 300 people are watching me at that exact moment.
Very nice.
And it's just terrifying. It terrifies me, though, because it's like 300 people watching my face now. It's like, it's bizarre. I feel like I have a lot of responsibility with that. It freaks me out in a way, because it's like, it's just a lot of people, isn't it, that I'll never meet, I'll never talk to and stuff, watching me. And it's kind of, if you look at the countries that you've been viewed in as well, it's just amazing to think the entire planet, like someone from every country has watched you, and they have their own lives, and they do stuff, and they've taken the time to watch me, and might have learned something and stuff. People watch my videos in schools, and it's crazy. In fact, when I was in school, people were watching my video. The English teachers were watching. They put my video on in class, not knowing that it was me. It wasn't my class; it was the other class. But they watched me whilst I was in school, learning from them. It was so bizarre.
Because I definitely have sent your videos to people and said, look at this. This is what so and so did. And it's that moment of like, yeah, it's strange, because I've interviewed people where I can now email and chat to and have a blather with, who I would never, I always see as these like gods at this kind of level. And it is strange. Like I was number, was it 28 in social, was it personal development in Slovenia or somewhere like that? You know, and it was like, how on earth does somebody like that find those channels? And I can understand like the big name videos, but you know that, and I think that's the thing, the beauty of your channel as well, is you actually break down things that people enjoy as much, but let them see it at a whole new level.
Yeah.
But can we change this quickly? Can we understand body language in a matter of minutes enough to better our relationships? How quickly can somebody become better at body language, do you think?
I think from watching, if someone's been watching this, I think if you just literally make a note of what I've said in terms of reading people, like the feet and stuff, and you just learn to look for that. All it is learning to look for it. It's not actually, the knowledge is quite simple. It's just actively going, okay, I need to look for this in a situation, actually remembering to look. I think that's it. You know, next time you meet someone in person, look at their feet and just see what their foot positioning is. Is it pointing directly towards you? Are they pointing 1 foot away? That's the first step, I think. And then look at their eyes and stuff like that. Are they distancing, or how much eye contact are they making? Are they looking at you too much, too less? If there's a girl that you potentially have a crush on, talk to them, see what they do, compliment them, see how they react, and don't make any solid conclusions, but just think like, okay, it might mean this. And as you go on, then you'll be able to have a bigger knowledge base of like proxemics, and why people exhibit these behaviors, and that's sort of like a more deeper understanding. But you know, you can tell a lot from just surface level understanding of body language, and it doesn't take long to learn.
I mean, that is definitely, like, I was listening, kind of going, right, okay, next conversation, I'm looking at that. You know, I was trying to take it in and think of my next question, and you know, it's you've given out some absolute gems. I mean, I definitely want to do a round 2 where we really get into the sort of the deeper nuances and things like that. But what would you want people to take from this? Like, if you had to sum this up, you know, is there a go home message that you would give them, or maybe a bit of homework or something just to remember about body language or relationships?
Okay, I think the thing I'll say is 80% of any communications you have with people, 70 to 80%, is body language. If you can master that, you have a huge advantage, an absolutely huge advantage in life, because you know how to help people. If someone, your partner or something, is feeling sad, you know what body language to do to help them. You know what body language to do to be confident in work. You know what body language to do if you're being interviewed, and you can significantly improve your chances of getting that job you want, or even getting the girlfriend that you want, if you do these body language cues, if you know body language. So just take the time to learn body language. We spend so much time learning different languages, English, French, but if 70 to 80% is actually non-verbal communication, and it's universal, so it doesn't matter what language you speak, learn that. That's what you should be learning. And trust me, you won't regret it. It's a superpower.
Yeah, because when you said that, I thought, why are people not spending more time learning this? And it's almost like people just don't seem to understand there is this hidden language. You know, it's what these things mean. And it's just the small insight you've given in this will blow so many people away, because they will start seeing the micro expressions, the fake smiles, the way the eyes, you know, the smile doesn't meet the eyes, or the way the feet actually highlight their deception of the distancing behavior. I mean, I like that one where, you know, the guy was like literally moving his head back, or like he was moving it, the way he played with his hair and what it meant. Yeah. And there's some amazing videos, but until we can get around 2, because I know we're way over our time limit, how can people keep in touch with you? How can we follow, you know, get in touch with you? I mean, speaking events, if I follow your social media, that sort of thing, because you've started a new channel branding. And I also like to ask, why green, by the way?
Well, actually, it's psychology. Green and red on YouTube stand out significantly more. And I'll tell you something interesting as well, is that I alternate my thumbnails. So I run one thumbnail for a day, then another, just to see what the click-through rate is. when I don't put the arrows, the big arrows and the circles around people's faces, my click-through rate halves. So,
Okay.
and that's the difference between a viral video and just a terribly performing video, the click-through rate. So that's kind of why we do it. And I know I get criticisms for it, clickbaity thumbnails, but you have to. It's YouTube. And yeah, it's fascinating. But red and green stand out the most on YouTube. So I'm starting to implement green into the branding, basically just to make the click-through rate increase. Because I think the videos, my average watch time is something like 7 minutes. It's nuts on YouTube. YouTube's like 2 or 3 minutes at best. But my click-through rate's quite low, so I need to get that click-through rate up, and then more people will be hooked onto the videos, I think.
Because that's definitely something I noticed was, it's like 30,000 on this video, 100,000 on this. You have an amazing amount of views. People are coming because you're giving actual in-depth information, but you're giving valid, life-useful information. But you're not just coming out with 25 things to look out for on a cover. It's actually quality information that makes giving people examples they've seen and to understand it. But what's your social media handles? How can people follow along with the branding?
So if you go onto my YouTube, all of my social media is there. So I have an Instagram, which is just Enigma YT. I have Twitter, which is, I think, Enigma YT or YTC. But they're all on my YouTube channel if you head over there. If you want to message me, I'm open to messages. I usually respond to lots. I've got a Discord as well that people ask questions on. But it's all on my YouTube channel if you head over there. And yeah, I'm free to answer questions pretty much all the time.
And what do you want the evolution of your brand to be? What would you like? What's the next stage for the Enigma brand? Because you're going to go places.
Thank you. I hope so. Well, I made the mistake of not making it about me, and I don't want to be arrogant at all there, but channels are about obviously what you do, but it's also about the person and the character. So I'm trying to make it more about me as a person. So I'm doing more light-hearted videos, funny videos that I can react to, and then also implement body language to that, because I want to make it broad. I want to make it general to everyone, not just me, so that even random people, anyone can watch my videos and find it entertaining, but also informative. And I think that's what, if the goal is to teach people body language, that's the way to do it, is to make it applicable to everyone. Films are applicable to people who like films and body language, but now it's open to everyone, I think, and that's really the aim of the channel.
Well, that's it for another week, and thank you for listening. It's now time to take what you've learned and use it to develop and enhance your life with the key points mentioned. Listen, try it, embrace it, use it, and crush it. Now's your time to hit that next level in your life. If you liked this episode, then please leave a comment on the show notes or a review of the show on your podcast platform. Everything helps evolve the show. Until next week, keep seeking the next level in your life.